o'clock. We are running on a skeleton crew this evening, and we have one of our members coming from a spelling bee who will be here in just a few minutes. So we're going to start as soon as she gets here. So thanks for everybody's patience. Usually we're very timely with our starts, but we have a few complications this evening.
Okay, security.
Call the January 22nd meeting of the school committee to order. Getting a little bit of a late start this evening. We do have a member on Zoom, so we'll do everything by roll call. We're going to start tonight by doing our public hearing on the budget. So that'll actually be our roll call to order, will be the opening the public hearing. So Tom, can we start with a motion?
Sure. Motion to open the public hearing on the FY27 budget.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Sarah, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. So the hearing is open. All right, so we're in meeting 2 of 3 on our budget process. We do have another item on the agenda this evening for budget discussion, so this doesn't have to be the only time we discuss it this evening, but from a public participation perspective, this is the public hearing. If there's anybody in the crowd who'd like to ask any questions on the budget, I'm staring at you, Dr. Quorum. You can do so now. You can also, we'll have the opportunity again later in the evening. So, but this is as well as the Finance Committee meeting. You've got a few opportunities. So, and another meeting next week as well. So, okay. So with that, then.
Just one reminder to folks that if they do have any written questions, to get them in by end of tonight, if they could, please, so we can get our Q&A prepared for next week's meeting.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll take another motion.
Motion to close the public hearing on FY27 budget and return to regular session.
Seconded.
Seconded by Laura. Sarah? Yes. Tom?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. And the hearing is closed. All right. We'll move now to, let me just do a quick walk through the agenda, and then we'll jump in. So we'll start with public comment. We'll vote on our consent agenda. We'll have a very brief report section tonight, and then in new business, we've got two exciting items. We have 2 facilities naming requests, which we'll hear the first meeting, or the first discussion. We'll have the first discussion of this evening. I'll set the stage for kind of how that works when we get there in a few minutes, but very exciting to hear both of those this evening. We'll have a learning and teaching update. We've got 3 scholarship funds that we will vote to award dollars from this year. We'll revisit the FY27 budget discussion, and then we'll have a discussion about the superintendent search. I'll share some updates, and then I do want to take a vote to approve our revised timeline this evening. And that will bring us to the end of the evening, probably, hopefully, short and sweet tonight. So. All right, with that, let's go first, public comment. So anybody in the audience who wants to speak to anything that's not on the agenda this evening, speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, we are good on that. Let's move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Sarah? Yes. Tom?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. Okay. Reports this evening. Folks may notice Dr. Milichewski's not here this evening. He did say we could share. He had a knee surgery on Tuesday. Relatively routine stuff, not anything to be alarmed about, but is probably watching us on Zoom at home, and we told him not to come tonight. So, best wishes to Dr. Milichewski for quick recovery from his knee procedure. We're not going to do any staff reports this evening. Are there any liaison reports? I'll just open the floor.
None here.
Nope.
No liaison reports. All right, we are cruising right along. All right, so then with that, we can move into new business. So we've got 2 facility naming requests this evening. So for, those who are here to speak to those and those who are here or watching at home, we've got a policy, it's a school committee policy FF on facilities naming. It's got a lot of steps to it. It's got a few steps to it. These naming processes are taken pretty seriously. So don't take anything that we say or don't say tonight, or the fact that feels like there are a few hurdles to jump through as any indication for, of how the committee feels about, kind of these particular nominations. The process from here will be, this evening, we'll hear the nomination from the nominating parties. We may ask some clarifying questions. We don't have any discussion on the merits of the nomination this evening, but we may ask some clarifying questions. We may ask nothing. In fact, most times we do ask nothing, and you sort of say your piece, we say thank you, and off you go. At a future meeting, which will be next week, we will have a discussion and a vote on whether or not to refer the nominations to an advisory committee to the school committee. If we choose to refer it to an advisory committee, that'll be made up of a sort of cross-section of community members, a representative from the high school in both of these cases, a member of the business community, somebody from the school committee. There's a few, it's kind of a predetermined set of folks that would participate in that. My intent would be that if both of these nominations are accepted for referral to a nomination advisory committee, we'll form a single committee to hear and advise on both, given that they're both affiliated with the high school, sort of with the high school complex. From there, that committee will have, usually takes, a meeting or two for them to do their work and to just have a discussion about the nominations, come back to us with a recommendation, probably in the early spring timeframe would be my guess, late winter, early spring timeframe. And then at that point, we'll take the vote on whether or not to accept the nomination and move forward with the renaming. So really sort of 3 steps, 3 or 4 steps, depending on how you count it in the journey here. Just designed to ensure that we take this seriously, but again, not there to be impediments per se. Okay, so with that, why don't we start, Claudia, with we've got the nomination on the weight room and fitness center. And if you would like to join us up here at the dais, it'll be best from a microphone perspective.
Just sit anywhere?
Maybe
One of those
closest
chairs?
to us is probably
Or
the
you
best,
can, I
yeah.
can pull that one over and you can sit
Yeah,
right
you can
here.
even join Tom.
That way it's even easier for the camera to pick you up as well. I'll pull you over. I don't bite, I promise.
Yeah, we have so much room tonight. Oh, it's going to be on TV.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I should have warned you.
So many people watch, too.
I will say on most nights, if you're kind of on the wings, you don't end up on TV, you're safe. But tonight, we're a little short-staffed.
Must-see. Appointment TV, yeah.
Take it away.
Okay. Well, I'm thrilled to be here. This has been an initiative that's, $550,000 effort, which started in April of this year with a call to the athletic director. And then the superintendent and I met probably a half dozen times before August with Tom Zayer as well. And then we introduced Nick Sweat from Matrix Equipment into the picture. And within 120 days, we had this project completely put together. And I don't think to this minute we've had any hiccups. It's been very smooth. They were great to work with, and I'm thrilled. So grew up in this town, went to Joshua Eaton, Parker, and then graduated from the high school. Reading's always been my home. Don't live here anymore, but I have family in town. And my dad did teach here in 1959 to 61, 2 years before going to Wakefield, where he spent another 30 years there, or 30-plus years, I guess. But at any rate, always wanted to give back to this community, wanted to give back to the school, the teachers, the athletes, the students, mentors, coaches. So with that, I'm asking that the fitness center be named in my parents' name, Robert and O. Elizabeth Mixon, and donated or gifted in loving memory of her parents, Claudia Mixon, class of 1971. Pretty straightforward on that. The athletic training room, I know that I had sent this to the superintendent a month or so ago, limiting that to the memory of my father. It could either be Robert Mixon or Coach Robert Mixon, again, in loving memory of her father, Claudia Mixon. That's
Any questions?
What did your dad coach?
here. He went to school at UNH with John Hollingsworth. I think that's probably how he ended up here, because he went to Melrose for a couple years before we left New Hampshire. We lived up in North Conway. He taught science here, but he ended up teaching history for the rest of his life at Wakefield. He coached here as an assistant football coach. I think a few other sports as an assistant coach, but I can't be sure. I went through yearbooks and couldn't find completely everything. And then he coached 3 or 4 sports over at Wakefield through the years.
Sarah, any questions on your end? No? So as I said, we can't, we won't discuss the nomination, but what we can do is, offer our, first in-person public thank you for the incredible generosity of the gift. It's
You're welcome.
incredibly generous is probably the only set of words I can come up with, and I know we're all really excited about the ribbon cutting coming up here in a few weeks as well. So if there's nothing else, you're off the hook, and we will.
I just have a quick question on the ribbon cutting. Since you said it's a 2-month, could be a long 2-month process, it sounds like there won't be a dedication on the 12th.
Yeah, it's the way the
Or an
process is laid out.
announcement, I
it's-
should say.
Yeah, the way the process is laid out, it's unlikely that we'll be able to progress it before the ribbon cutting.
Okay.
So, I think I can speak for the administration. We'd probably love to have you back when we're ready to, dedicate it if the naming process goes through.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, thank
Awesome.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pete,
Good evening.
you want to, yeah, you can all come up, or whoever wants to speak.
I'll slide over the other
Yeah.
way. 1, 2. You could spread out across these 3 seats here. Okay. Wherever you'd like to be, sir. Thank you.
All righty. Well, good evening. My name's Pete Moscarello, and I was a 35-year teacher and coach here at RMHS, and a high school classmate of Claudia's. We graduated together. So I'm here with Kim Penny and Phil Vaccaro, and we are very grateful for this opportunity to propose that the press box at John Hollingsworth Field be officially named the Ted Bryson Announcing Booth. If at any time between 1976 and the present day you attended Reading Memorial High School, or had a child who did, or even went to a Reading High football or basketball game, then you know Ted Bryson. During those 50 years, Ted has served RMHS and the Reading community in countless ways with unmatched loyalty, humility, and integrity. Over Ted's half-century of commitment to RMHS, he was a longtime physical education teacher and department head, assistant baseball coach, head girls varsity basketball coach, varsity and JV boys basketball coach, assistant golf coach, and of course, public address announcer for football and basketball games. All told, Ted has given us a mind-boggling 137 seasons of service. One of the great privileges of my own career was to work alongside Coach Bryson every spring. I quickly came to admire his knowledge of the game, his ability to connect with kids, his unselfish commitment, and his devoted friendship. Thus, Ted Bryson has had a profound impact on my life professionally and personally. But most notably, Ace, as he is affectionately called, is recognized as the voice of the Rockets, having announced RMHS home football games for 49 consecutive seasons and basketball games for 22 years. Thousands of residents have enjoyed hearing Ted's clear, comforting, familiar voice at hundreds of sporting events. He always arrives early, prepares thoroughly, and takes pride in his craft. That is why his announcing is as good as any you'd hear at a college or pro event. Now, Ted recently shared that this past football season was his last, which makes now the perfect time to honor him. Regarding the Reading School Committee's criteria for facility naming, Ted doesn't just check all the boxes, he exceeds those standards by virtue of his contributions to education, superior level of performance, great community service, and higher standards of ethics. Ace is just a genuinely kind, thoughtful, humble man of character who has been a steady, positive role model for generations of students, colleagues, and families. That in itself deserves recognition. We know there is widespread community support for this proposal, as Coach Bryson is respected, admired, and loved by all who know him. Reading residents and RMHS personnel have already begun to provide testimony in writing and will continue to show support by attending future meetings. So thank you for your consideration. It is now my pleasure to introduce Kim Penny.
Yeah.
Just,
You could
you're
just
good.
speak. It'll pick you up.
It'll work?
pick you up,
Okay,
yep.
great. My name is Kim Penny. Thank you for the introduction, Pete. I have been a coach here for, well, I'm not here anymore, but I was here for 15 years. Phil Vaccaro hired me, and it was one of the best 15 years of my, stages of my life. So I'm honored to be here tonight. It's my distinct pleasure to speak to you in strong support of naming the press box at Reading Memorial High School's John Hollingsworth Field in honor of longtime public announcer Ted Bryson. Ted has dedicated more than 50 years of his life to the Reading Rockets in countless roles: teacher, coach, equipment manager, administrator, as you just heard from Pete, and so much more. When I began my 15-year career as varsity girls basketball coach here at Reading in 1997, I think, yeah, Ted was one of the very first members of the community to welcome me with open arms. He immediately made sure I had access to the storage room for uniforms, basketballs, equipment, and from our very first interaction, I sensed that Ted was genuine, someone I could trust and rely on. Quickly learned that Ted Bryson, known as Ace, was the linchpin of game day operations alongside athletic director Phil Vaccaro at every varsity girls and boys home basketball game. Ted was unwavering in his commitment, arriving early, staying late to ensure proper setup and breakdown, often for multiple doubleheaders each week. He led an outstanding team that included his wife, Jane, who kept the scorebook, a loyal friend, Jay Dumas, who operated the game clock, and yet it was Ted's exceptional play-by-play announcing that truly elevated the experience and helped foster the culture of excellence I was striving to build as a young coach at that time within our program. Ted's deep, commanding voice echoing through the fieldhouse became a staple of every home game for players, families, fans, and even opponents. When you played a game at Reading, you knew you were entering a program that took its craft seriously, and Ted's voice was the anchor of that professionalism for decades, still is today. His unwavering presence at the scorer's table, right beside where I stood coaching from the bench, instilled confidence in me. On countless occasions, a simple knowing glance from Ted during a controversial call was all I needed to stay composed and focused. Ted was not only a remarkable announcer, he truly understood the game, and I deeply valued his perspective. I firmly believe that success takes a village. When our girls' basketball program, after more than 150 home games, reached the ultimate pinnacle with a state championship in 2012, I credited a meaningful part of that success to Ted and his steadfast dedication to his role as he called play-by-play for every single one of those games. Over time, Ted became far more than a trusted colleague. He became a friend. He and Jane regularly attended our end-of-season banquets and were, and continue to be, cherished members of our Reading basketball family. Ted Bryson has positively impacted countless lives over more than 5 decades of service to the Reading community. With deep gratitude, I respectfully ask that you give favorable consideration to officially honoring him by naming the Reading Memorial High School press box the Ted Bryson announcing booth. In doing so, you will help preserve the legacy of a man whose exceptional voice and even more exceptional character has meant so much to so many, ensuring it endures for generations to come. Thank you.
Good job, Kim.
And I introduce Phil Vaccaro.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on Ted's behalf. I am respectfully requesting that the announcer booth be named in honor of Ted Bryson in recognition of his exceptional service and lasting contributions to our athletic programs in our community. I make this request having served as Ted's supervisor for 18 years in my role as athletic director. Ted Bryson was far more than an announcer. He was a trusted voice and a consistent, dependable presence who helped establish the tone and professionalism of every event. Through his integrity, attention to detail, and commitment to excellence, he enhanced the experience of athletes, officials, spectators, and families. One of Ted's most significant contributions was his unwavering commitment to sportsmanship. From the announcer's booth, he consistently promoted respect for players, coaches, officials, and opponents. When emotions ran high, Ted addressed situations calmly and professionally, helping to de-escalate rowdy behavior and restore a positive atmosphere. Ted also understood the critical importance of spectator safety. He was always prepared to communicate unusual or unexpected safety directives, including instructions regarding emergency exits, evacuation procedures, and appropriate actions during emergencies. You can tell I was the guy responsible for that because I so much appreciated his preparation. In addition to his announcing duties, Ted regularly assisted with game administration. He helped set up and break down venue requirements, supported event staffs and officials, and willingly stepped in whenever assistance was needed to ensure events ran smoothly. If you attended any games, especially in the basketball, you would see him there putting out the chairs, and when the game was over, he was taking them in, and that was not his responsibility in his job description, but Ted was always willing to lend a helping hand. He also served as a highly conscientious equipment manager. He was responsible for collecting uniforms at the conclusion of each season, maintaining accurate inventories, and monitoring the need for replacement of lost or worn equipment. His diligence and organization ensured that our programs were consistently well prepared. The announcer's room is a fitting tribute, and it represents leadership, preparation, and trust, the very qualities Ted Bryson demonstrated throughout his many years of service. Therefore, I too respectfully propose that the announcer's booth be officially named the Ted Bryson Announcer's Booth. This designation would recognize not only Ted's years of service, but also the professionalism, sportsmanship, and dedication he brought to every event. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
You all.
Happy to answer any questions, and just also want to add that Ted has been inducted into the RMHS Athletic Hall of Fame a few years back, and Mr. Brandt has a link to a video that was shown at the induction ceremony that depicts his career and accomplishments.
Are there any questions?
If you've been to a game, you would hear, I'm from Somerville, you can tell I don't pronounce my R's, but he came from Indiana, and everybody knows Ted as the ball is out of bounds. And for me, from a kid from Somerville, I just love listening to Ted.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
You all, I think you said you want it to be the Ted Bryson announcing booth, but a couple of you mentioned specifically he's known as Ace.
Yeah.
Is there a reason to exclude Ted, quote, Ace, quote, Bryson from the name.
I can speak to that. When we talked to Ted about this proposal, we asked, what would you like it be? Because our first thought was Ted, Ace, Bryson, press box. He said, I would like Ted, Bryson announcing booth. I mean, that can still be a discussion, I think, but that's it. Ace, in his first year coaching JV baseball in 1977, he threw a lot of batting practice. He's a lefty, and one of the players called him our ace left-hander, and that's how Ace has stuck for over 50 years.
So has he hated the nickname for 50 years, and we're just now finding out? Is that, yeah? No, okay. All right, well, thank you all very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We will bring this up again next week. Okay, thank
See you
you.
then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, I'm going to need an assist here. We timed out and we're locked out of the laptop. All right, so with that, we will move to the learning and teaching update, and I will bring the slides up here in just a minute. Aaron and Mary Ann, do you want to join us on the dais? Dr. Hardy, are you kicking us off while I pull these up? Okay. Do you want to drive or do you want me to? Do you have a preference? I'm fine either way.
If it's easy enough to bring over here, I can do it, or I can just sit
no,
on this
absolutely.
side.
Plug will make it.
The battery doesn't need to get plugged in. I don't know. We'll see. Well, good evening, everyone. We are thrilled to be here to give you a mid-year learning and teaching update. I'm joined by two members of my team, Erin Burchell, who's our K-8 Humanities Curriculum Coordinator, Marianne Lynn, who's our K-8 STEM Curriculum Coordinator. This evening, we're going to walk you through some of the key projects that our department is working on this year in the area of curriculum and instruction and assessment. All right. So you can see on the screen that we've put together a little Venn diagram that sort of shows you the buckets of work that our department takes on. And tonight we really are planning to focus on the top one, which is monitoring and supporting curriculum. This is that sort of continuous review of the curriculum that's in use with our students and the support of implementing that curriculum. It obviously overlaps with our other buckets of work. You're going to hear us talk a lot about professional development as well, and of course it overlaps with student support systems. But when you see this list of projects that we're going to talk with you about tonight, we're really proud that our department is tackling all of these curriculum projects this year. This has built over the last 4 to 5 years. We certainly weren't in this position to have so many ongoing projects a bit ago. And that's really because of our philosophy that once we start a project, we really stick with it, and it doesn't drop off after that first year or two of implementation. And in fact, what we hope you'll see tonight is that the longer we work on a curriculum project, the more impact we start to see on student growth and learning, because we really are able to move to a point where things start to work cohesively. And our goal tonight is for you to see how these aren't just separate individual projects, but really work together to build a system where we are going to see more success for all students. So as you know, the end of our end-of-year learning and teaching update is really when we start to talk to you about student data and outcomes for the year. This presentation is really focused on sort of our ongoing work. We did, of course, want to throw one slide in there just to let you know that we, of course, are always throughout the year monitoring student progress, and that even though some of the initiatives we're talking to you about tonight are really new, we do see some promising outcomes already happening for our student achievement on MCAS, some of our internal indicators like iReady, and also some nice attention from external experts, just letting us know we're sort of headed on the right track. And when we're talking about curriculum tonight, I want to remind you that we're not just talking about materials. So it's not just the what is in students' hands or in front of teachers. It's really the how instruction is happening, instructional practices, assessment, the order that content is taught in. And so throughout a curriculum review process, all of these items are in play. tonight, as we're discussing the ongoing projects with you, we decided to let you in on a bit of a frame that we've been talking about in our office. And this is really 3 practices that we believe really lead to the best outcomes for students. Just to fill you in quickly, these 3 practices, belonging, consistency, and coherence, they come from a study that was published by TNTP in 2004. And in that study, they examined schools from all across the country, looking for schools that had trajectory-changing outcomes for students. So those places that really were closing the gap, which we know is hard to do in education and can be rare. And then they took a small cohort of those schools and studied them in depth to see like what practices are in place, why is this happening? And what they found across those schools were these practices were consistently in place and in use. So with belonging, we're really talking about staff and students feeling respected and accepted, so they have that foundational safety as they're entering into learning. Consistency, meaning that each and every classroom reliably has those strong teaching experiences in place, and that students are all being held to rigorous expectation. And then coherence being when those core materials, interventions, and assessments all work together to advance the progress of students. And so as we talk about the different programs, the different projects we have in place, we're going to sort of fill you in through the lens of these 3 themes. A reminder as well that our curriculum review process here in Reading is based on this graphic on the right. This comes from DESE's Implement MA, and we really modeled the process that we take. You'll see that as the process goes, it builds in complexity. And so we also tonight want to just sort of demonstrate to you that these 3 practices also build as we move through the cycles. And what you're going to hopefully also see is a through line of regarding professional learning. We also think that an important piece of all of this work is acknowledging one of our most important assets, and that's our teachers and our staff, and making sure that they are seeing continuous growth. So in the original packet, we had organized the projects by content area with humanities first and STEM second. We've rearranged them a little for tonight to instead sort of be in the order of this implementation cycle. So we're going to start with projects that are the newest and then work up to projects that have been underway the longest. We think that will make it the easiest to make our point as we go. All right, so we're going to launch right in with some reviews and implementation that are in year 1. So for each project, we are not going to go through all the bullets on the slide. We know that everyone can read that at your leisure. Instead, we're just going to highlight for you a little bit about the purposes and then how we see this really starting to fulfill those 3 practices that we're moving towards. So the first curriculum review is a brand new one that we just launched this year. It's with the Middle School Social Studies Department. I'm really lucky to be joined with an outstanding leadership team in running that review. Eric Goldstein and Stephanie Malone from the middle school, Carolyn Allison and Megan Howie from the high school. The reason that we launched this curriculum review is that the middle school social studies had not been looked at in over 8 years. And even though a new scope and sequence was developed at that time when there was a change in the standards, there really hasn't been work around maintaining that. And so what happens over time is teachers start to drift away from that scope and sequence and sort of do a little bit more on their own and away from what that scope and sequence defines. And that means that not all of our students are having that access to the same content and the same grade level expectations. So really the work this year has been around establishing a vision for what social studies instruction looks like at the middle school level. This is a way that we start to build that belonging in the staff, that they all are working towards a common goal and have that sort of motivation to improve outcomes for students. Additionally, building consistency is really important in the first year of any of our curriculum reviews. It's really a time for us to examine what is the latest evidence on best instructional practices, and for teachers to build consensus and start to build their vocabulary around their subject area and agree to what those grade level standards are going to be for students. And so the work of the committee this year is really to start to define those things. I did want to mention, too, that we are doing that work during the department meetings on the early release days. We are doing this for all of the middle school curriculum work. This is a shift we made 2 years ago based on feedback that we got from teachers. With elementary, we've typically done that in an after-school committee that teachers are compensated for. But with the middle school departments, especially since it's a fewer number of teachers, we really felt that in order to really build that belonging for the teachers, we needed to have every voice at the table for this work. So in general, the goal with this committee is really starting to align instruction and practices so all of our students are having the same high level of expectations in social studies. Awesome. And I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ann to fill us in on elementary science and grade 7 and 8 math.
Yeah, and so similar to the social studies curriculum review, elementary hadn't had a curriculum review in many, many years. And so since the last review, a lot has changed in terms of recommendations for approaches to teaching science. And there have been shifts not only in instruction, but also in methods of assessment more recently. And so the focus of the curriculum review, just like with social studies, has really been centered around belonging consistency in this year one of the project. And so regarding belonging, we really wanted to make sure that the elementary perspective is represented in our science vision statement, and that statement was developed a few years ago when we had the secondary science curriculum review. But we wanted to make sure that elementary was represented there. And another way that we wanted to increase belonging was to administer a survey to all elementary school teachers so that even those who didn't have the after-school time to serve on the committee could have their voice heard in this process. And so in terms of consistency, we're really working on building the consistency by using research to explore these pedagogical shifts in science education in order to build shared expectations around what good instruction looks like and the quality of the content that we are presenting to our students. And so what we've been doing at some of our council meetings early on is discussing science articles. We had some teachers who were able to go to the Masella Conference this year in Marlborough and hear from the keynote speaker, TJ McKenna, who is a BU professor who is a leader in the field of STEM education. And then in November, there were some members of the Curriculum Council who headed out to Western Massachusetts to Quabbin Regional, where they are implementing a brand new Open SCIED elementary curriculum. And so teachers got to spend time in classrooms and hearing from teachers who are implementing a curriculum that embraces these pedagogical shifts. And I know that I keep talking about pedagogical shifts, and so I would say that, and you'll hear it again when we're talking about middle school science, and really the shift is that the units that we're building are really anchored in some type of phenomena that really just, and that's really just tapping into students' natural curiosity, and then the teacher is really carefully developing the lessons to build the content knowledge and the vocabulary as you go through the unit, once you have the students' interest and get their questions. And so the teacher then is strategically using those questions to drive the rest of the unit and is actively involved in making sure that she or he is guiding the students towards the science vocabulary and concepts that we want them to walk away with at the end of a unit. And then for grade 7 and 8 math curriculum review, the reason why we're doing that review this year is because our current curriculum, which is Envisions, is expiring. And so we needed to look at the curriculum, and we knew that teachers did not want to renew Envision, and mostly because it employs a very traditional approach to math education. and doesn't align with the work that teachers have been doing over the past few years to really build thinking classrooms centered around complex math tasks. So at this stage in the review process, we're focused on belonging and consistency because it is year one. Belonging for teachers, because the process honors teachers as the experts and they're the ones choosing which of the HQIMs we're going to evaluate. And belonging for students, because we know that the current program is not working in meeting the needs of all learners. And we really want to adopt a curriculum that ensures that all students are able to see themselves as mathematicians. And so regarding consistency, teachers started by looking at the guiding principles set forth in the Massachusetts frameworks and really dove into bettering their understanding of what those principles mean, and then calibrating to see where we currently have strengths in implementing those principles and where there are needs that we will hope that a new curriculum will help us to address. So the goal of this work is really to build a consistent understanding of good math instruction and to reduce variation in the quality of materials and the quality of instruction from classroom to classroom. And I want to give a big shout out to Ramsey Merritt and Lana Montero, who are facilitating these curriculum review meetings.
All right, one more in our first year. So this year, we were really excited to launch year one of our ESL curriculum implementation of National Geographic. You may remember in the spring that our ML director, Kaz Hall, came, and we were able to present to you the process we went through in the selection. And so we are in year one. This is an important year where we pair the work of learning the new program with high-quality professional learning for teachers. This is a key to building that piece of consistency. We want to make sure that teachers that are implementing any new program, but in this case, this program, are aligning or understand how that instruction aligns with the WIDA standards. And so that is a way that we build clear vocabulary, and we can, as best we can, be assured that students are getting the same learning experience regardless of which teacher or which classroom they are in. And so we are hearing great things about the start of this program. Our teachers really are reporting that the materials have an asset-based lens for our multilingual learners, which is really great for building that sense of belonging for our students. So more to come on this, I'm sure, but wanted to let you know that that is underway and going well. All right, we'll shift now into some of our curriculum projects that are a little bit, have been with us a little bit longer, things that are in years 2 and 3. And the first one up is our social studies curriculum review up at the high school. This is being led by Carolyn Allison and Megan Howie. And this was launched last year really as a way to look at the instructional practices that were being used across the department, and also because there was a want or a need to build some systems for capturing units and lessons so that consistency could be built across the department. Some of the really exciting work that's happened is looking at the historical thinking skills, and as a department, well, the Curriculum Council has been able to help facilitate the work for the department to build some common assessments for those historical thinking skills. And so this year, part of building consistency was that that common assessment was given, and then the department and the council were able to score those common assessments and really start to identify the expectations for students as they're developing those skills. The council has helped to outline that each grade 9, 10, and 11 is going to have a different skill that they focus on. 9th grade is focusing on sourcing, 10th grade is on contextualization, and 11th grade is on corroboration, and the assessments aligned with those. So this is a really good example of how the curriculum review process builds consistency so that a student, regardless of which 10th grade classroom they are in, are going to have access to that historical thinking skill, and the common assessment gives teachers structures for really great collaborative conversations. Shift gear into our first humanities review, or actually implementation, I should say.
So middle school ELA. We are in year 2 of implementation of Amplify ELA, which is our core curriculum in 6 to 8. We had gone through 2 years of a curriculum review in middle school ELA. We took 2 years to do it. Last year was our first year of implementation, so this is year 2. We're really focused on building consistency and also leading a little bit towards coherence, because when we adopted Amplify ELA, we adopted the 100-lesson pathway, if you remember. And then we're going to build out the scope and sequence for the rest of the year with common units and common resources. And that's sort of the work we've entered into this year. So we have sort of 2 mechanisms for doing that. One is in department meetings, which are run and led by Andy Spinelli, who's the curriculum lead. He's a 7th grade ELA teacher at Parker. And the focus there is really on student engagement and instructional practices in terms of student engagement within the new curriculum. Again, really consistency building in terms of what engagement practices are we using across, both vertically and horizontally in classrooms. The other mechanism that we're using, I'm calling them grade level coherence days. And what they are full work days where we have the full grade level team of teachers in ELA come together and really start to work on a couple of different things. I nerdily called it the bridge and the blueprint. That's like sort of the theme for the year. So the bridge piece is really more the coherence piece in terms of thinking about like the standards and skills in the grade levels before you and your standards and skills, and what are we doing to bridge those things and make sure they're much more coherent for kids in terms of student experience. I'll talk about that in a second. And the blueprint piece is really building out that scope and sequence for the year with Amplify's 100-lesson pathway as like the core curriculum, but then like the what else are we doing and how does it connect to the core curriculum. So we're going to have 2 of those days this year. The building leadership at both Parker and Coolidge has been incredibly supportive in finding subs for like a whole grade level of teachers. Each of those 3 days. We had our first round last week. They were very fun, if I say so myself. But again, we're really trying to build consistency by examining the cognitive shifts and then agreeing to key learning at each grade level. So it's consistency and coherence sort of building at once. I think the coherence piece is really important in the middle grades. Middle school is 3 years. It's the shortest amount of time kids are in a space, in a school. And they're coming from elementary school and being there for 6 years, and then going to high school and being there for 4 years. So it has to connect on both ends. So that's one of the things we're really working on building out and thinking about what are our 5th graders coming in with and what do our 8th graders need to leave with, and what sort of does that look like in between vertically. So this month, last week when we had these coherence days, 6th grade teachers looked at 5th grade standards and 6th grade standards and looked at where sort of the cognitive leaps were. Talked a lot about like, okay, this is what they did in 5th grade, this is what they're expected to do in 6th grade. 6th grade did it, 7th grade did it for 6th grade, and then 7th and 8th grade did it for 7th and 8th. And then our next one in March, we're gonna do the opposite. We'll do our grade level standards and the grade level beyond to sort of just make sure we're thinking coherently about student experiences in ELA and how they connect.
So next up, middle school science. And as you might recall from our June update, the middle school curriculum review did not follow the typical trajectory in adopting an HQIM, and mostly because there were just such limited choices out there, and teachers had field tested one and rejected the other one without even field testing it. And so last spring, the middle school science teachers decided that the best route was for them to revise the current scope and sequence, recognizing how much work that was going to be. But in doing so, they were hoping to condense units to make them more thematic, and then to embed these shifts in instructional practices and in methods of assessments because they weren't present in the STEM scopes curriculum that they were using. Teachers are also, in addition to building out the content in the units are really focused, as we've been saying throughout the night, on the instructional practices that teachers are using and making sure that their classrooms have consistent and predictable routines and methods for investigation. And in doing so, hopefully that's going to free up mental energy for students really just to focus on the science content and the science skills rather than not having clear expectations as to what they need to be doing at any given time during the class by having these routines that they will use throughout their middle school years. So teachers aren't spending a lot of time building those routines because students, hopefully, as we get farther along in this work, will already have those routines in place. We saw that really effectively with our IM curriculum in elementary school, and so we're hoping that actually will work for middle school science as well. And Kim Peterson is our middle school curriculum lead for science, and she's been playing an integral role in helping to build out these units. We also were able to have a half-day release time for teachers to work on building out science units this year, and we hope to, as we build them, once teachers plan out and execute the units for the first time, then to come back and to figure out what worked, what didn't, and how we might need to make changes. So hoping for one more day in the spring to do some of that work as well, but see this as a process that will take a good amount of time because teachers are creating the units as they go.
All right, and we have a couple of projects, believe it or not, that are in year 4 or greater.
So I'm really excited to talk about elementary lit lab. Really excited. So we are in year 4 of ARC for literacy in grades 3 through 5. We're in year 3 for grades K through 2. So we started a version of Lit Labs last year, but took some feedback in teachers and leaders on how to improve it. What Lit Labs is really are not at like a sustainable structure for continued learning and growth and collaboration with teachers working together. Last year, we had like one representative from like the grade band 3 to 5, one representative from the grade band K to 2 at each of the schools. And this year we've expanded it to, we have a grade level representative from every school at every grade level. And what we do is we have Lit Labs happen in one day. K to 2 is there for half of the day, 3 to 5 is there for the other half of the day. I'm there for the whole day. And this year we have consultants from both ARC, Melissa Mann, who's been with us since the beginning of ARC, and Cara De La Terra from the Hill for Literacy. And both of those folks come as sort of the experts in ARC and at like the different routines from the Hill. And we really come together for some group learning on different topics. One of my favorite days of the year, but it's 5 days, so it's like really like 5-6 days, favorite days of the year. I think like one of the reasons we started playing with this structure last year is because we knew coaching with ARC was coming to an end, and we don't have literacy coaches and probably won't like in the foreseeable future. So we needed a really sustainable and scalable way to keep this learning going and keep a lot of the initiatives moving that we had started and a lot of the learning started. In terms of like best practices, both inside the curriculum and outside the curriculum that we're bringing in that we know are best for kids. Before I go on, I think like I just thanked the middle school principals and assistant principals for making space and time for this, because it's not easy when we pull teachers from a building. Same with the elementary principals and assistant principals. Like the lift doesn't go unnoticed, but also the impact is really huge on the people that come and then their colleagues later on. So in terms of belonging, all grade level teams are represented at each school, and that allows folks to really go back organically and authentically back to their teams during times that they have to talk about the learning that just happened and the decisions that were made and bring them right back to their colleagues at their school. They don't need a faculty meeting, like they don't need to wait a couple weeks for faculty meeting, they don't need to wait for like an elementary workshop 6 weeks later, they can go back and do it that day. It also really is empowering teachers as leaders in ways that are pretty authentic. Folks volunteered to come, and they give up time in their classrooms, but they know they are bringing things back that are really important to their students. It also really helps us to make strong connections across schools, which doesn't happen all the time, too. But the real big push is for coherence, right? So we have the materials, we know what's supposed to happen, we have consistency with what's happening across the elementary schools, across grade levels, classrooms, all of it. And this is really about how we're using the things to best meet the needs of our kids. It really is like a deeper way of looking at implementation and furthering it along by looking at instructional practices and like what instructional practices and best evidence-based practices match with what our kids need. So for example, this year, if you remember last year, all of our K-2 teachers took the asynchronous primary science of reading course from the Hill for Literacy. That's all of their professional development time was for that last year. So that was really great in terms of like building shared knowledge, but we didn't have time to come together and be like, okay, so now what? Like, what do we do? We have all these instructional routines that are great. We have this curriculum that we're still learning. How does it all go together? Lit Labs are really the place where we're figuring out where those things go together. So we've talked about the different instructional practices, and Cara and Melissa have really helped us like look at our core lessons that are whole group lessons with kids and think about where to add in a lot of those instructional routines. We've talked about it in terms of small group strategic instruction, what's working best there. Our literacy specialists are using a lot of the Hill strategies too, so they're talking about how they're doing it with their kids and what's working and what's not. So it's been a really great place in K-2 where we're coherently talking about if we're using these instructional routines strategically and consistently, it takes the cognitive load off of like the how kids are being asked to do things, and they can really focus on the orthographic mapping, the things that are really important. In terms of the content. Same with not same with 3 to 5, a little different with 3 to 5. We've been really focused on fluency and vocabulary routines and being really consistent in those and how to add those into core instruction in ARC 2 in ways that are consistent and also build off of one another in classrooms. I'm not gonna list all of the Lit Lab people and the teachers that like come, but it's been pretty fantastic to have everybody come together and really work to make this curriculum like even better than it has been in years past. There's a graphic on the next page, I should have said too, that sort of helps explain it a little bit more in the back and forth.
All right, last project.
So we're also at a really exciting point, or an exciting point in the implementation of IM. So K through 2 is in year 4 and 3 through 6 is in year 5 of implementation. And so we saw a need, and actually teachers were asking for really a shared, reliable way of assessing what students were learning in math, where there might be gaps across schools and classrooms. And they really wanted something that was going to be well aligned with the IM curriculum. And so this school year, we worked on creating and administering benchmark assessments 3 times a year. So beginning of year, middle of year, end of year for grades 2 through 5. And so grade 2 is transitioning away from the AMC assessment towards these IM assessments. And so this actually gives us just like another tool too for monitoring student progress, which is something that teachers and we were very interested in having. And so the purpose of the benchmarks is really to drive instruction and then interventions and enrichments. The math coaches are supporting the building leaders and facilitating data team meetings, and a huge shout out to the building administrators for really prioritizing those data meetings and working with us to support teachers because they really allow us to provide more targeted intervention when needed for students who aren't meeting the grade level standards. So as part of this project, we're also building out an IM-aligned resource bank for teachers to use for those interventions and enrichment. And so our goal is really to build a coherent system of intervention so that students are seeing IM-related topics in those intervention sessions that they are having, so that really what's happening in intervention is mirroring what's happening in the classroom instruction. And really just want to give a really big thank you, as I said, to our building leaders, but also to our math coaches. Lana Montero has been spearheading this initiative this year, and Tammy Marzicki has been highly involved in creating that resource bank, and both have been highly involved in the data team meetings and helping to facilitate them.
All right, so as we wrap up, I just want to kind of call your attention to some of the through lines that connect each of these projects, whether it's in year 1 or year 5 or 6. We really believe that creating those shared expectations, that common language, is essential in the work that happens. It's really like one of the priorities for all of our projects. And then the job-embedded teacher learning is also what we think really drives continuous improvement. And from the very start of any curriculum review, we let folks know that are joining the team that this is also a professional learning opportunity. It isn't just coming together to review materials. That folks that come on that team are expected to want to learn, want to review the latest research, and start to apply those practices in their classroom. As I mentioned at the beginning, we, throughout the process, have lots of different indicators that we monitor for all of these processes. Of course, one of the first visible things are those adult actions, sort of the visible implementation of the materials and the items. And so you see some examples there. The other thing, too, is just what we start to hear from our student experiences. We are lucky to have the opportunity to do walkthroughs with our principals. Also, another part of this process is supporting our principals in the look-fors as they start to support teachers through their observations as well. And then, of course, those final student outcomes are really what we're looking to each year. We know that MCAS is, an important indicator for us just to see not only our student achievement, but also growth. And then as we build out our district common assessments, those are really helpful as well in different screenings to just monitoring as we go how our students are growing. All right. So we would love to answer any questions that you have about any of these projects or our curriculum review process in general.
Who wants to go first? I've got questions.
Go ahead.
Why does everybody look at me?
No.
Yeah, why would we look at you? I don't know.
I'll make a few observations and then
Go
ask
for it,
questions,
go for
right? So as you talk through this and as you talk about the through lines, and fortunately Dr. Hardy and I got to spend a little bit of time last night talking through some of this as well. One of the things that jumps out to me, and I would have never used the word belonging before when it comes to teachers, but I think is huge in this regard. Prior to this administration, I would consistently and every time hear about professional development being not aligned to what a teacher really wants to learn or to their job. And it was just random. Like, we almost literally had an underwater basket weaving professional development class at one point with the previous administration. And so I think seeing how this aligns and how the buy-in of the teachers is being brought into the process is really great to see, right? So I think that's number one. There's, I want to say that, but there are some things that still kind of red flag me as we go through this as well. I mentioned a little bit to Sarah last night. I think it's the elementary science one. The wording that is used in some of this from an update perspective does cause me a little bit of concern. Strong desire for curriculum that supports students figuring out phenomena rather than just learning about science. I know the intent right? But the concern I have is the potential, if not executed properly, to actually lead to more anxiety for a student than them not knowing, in the not knowing part of it. And I say that as a construct of some of the challenges we faced last year here at the high school with some of the instructional patterns in biology in particular. And so, you know, I know that's not the intent in this, but I think it's just something to watch out for. Like, how do we make sure that the instructional patterns we're doing do not cause more harm than good, right? Especially if it's a new instructional pattern that doesn't have a true, deep research basis beneath it. I have a little bit of, cognitive dissonance of TCR-WP as a result of that was the newest best thing at the point in time, and we have since obviously seen that was not a good thing. So I want to be cautious of following the biggest, best, brightest thing, right? Instead of just making sure we're following truly successfully researched practices with high efficacy scores against them, not just the newest best thing, right? So I know that's not the intent, but I just want to throw that caution flag out there, right, as we go through it. A couple other quick observations as we go through this is, when we started rolling out ARC, I would ask Aaron, I would ask you, I'd ask Sarah, do they know the why? Not just the how, do they know the why? And so I think it's phenomenal as we look at the lit labs that we're bringing the why with the how in the room together with the teachers, right? That Hill for Literacy is there with ARC, that ARC is willing to expose themselves to having Hill for Literacy in the room at the same time, I think it's a really great demonstration of the partnership, in addition to the material improvements that they've done for our K through 2 stuff over the last year or so, to show that they're truly trying to go after the science, not just stamping we're science of reading on the papers, right? And so I think that's phenomenal to see as well. The other red flag that I would add is where our teachers are creating the materials, and not because our teachers can't create the materials, but because it frequently leads to misalignment with standards historically, and there are. Whether they're the best, I think we decided last year they're not ready for it yet, not ready for prime time, which is fine. There are materials out there in the science space at this point in time. And I think it's just a matter of how do we make sure that we are implementing a curriculum that A, follows the standards, but B, is accessible for everybody, C, has true measurement capabilities against it, right, that can tie into the rest of our data platforms. E is connected to what we're trying to do in some of the other things as well. Like ARC has a ton of science topics in it, as an example, right? I think Amplify does as well. The same thing with social studies, right? There's a lot of social studies built into the topics of those things. So are we also thinking about how we align some of the science with ARC in terms of scope and sequence, and social studies with ARC/Amplify as we go through some of this too. So yes, the ability to create materials is great, but there's so much that goes into creating really strong, deep, detailed, accessible materials. And frankly, many teachers don't have the time for that because guess what? They're teaching, right? So, and I know Ms. Peterson really well, right? So there's no shade on her at all. She's awesome. I just want to make sure that we're conscious of some of those things when we put them out there in the ether, for lack of a better way to say it. So that was more commentary than questions, but hopefully it makes sense.
No.
Sarah, anything on your end?
No, I guess I would just say, building a comms tool, most of my reading and writing based comments and feedback, but just building off of that point, I think thinking ahead and building on that idea of pull through across subject matter areas, and also and how we pull that through tier 2 support as well, and making sure we're consistent in our teaching practices across, and then pulling that through to tier 3 as well. So I look forward to hearing more about how we're doing that more accessible to teaching services as well.
All right, I'll go. I think that Tom made a lot of fair points. Some of them I would think of as probably yellow flags versus red flags, so I might soften a little bit, but I think there's some fair points in there. I do have some specific questions. In the elementary science curriculum review, there was a discussion about, or a point about the time on learning not being sufficient to support the HQIMs that are out there. I mean, there are about 10 other places where we would say we don't have enough time on learning.
Sure.
You know, are there any, you know, I know it's early days on this, but, you know, outside of the big one, which is elementary school half-day Fridays, like, are there any, do we see any glimmers of hope for how we might address that and be able to carve out enough time to support HQIMs in science?
I mean, one of the things that we are actually thinking about and looking at is that ARC integration, right? And granted, like, that does not do enough for science instruction because they're just two very different subjects, where one is really skills focused, so they are getting the content in, or some content in ARC. And so I don't want to say that that's going to be the cure, but looking at ways that we might be able to streamline or connect the subjects is something that we're definitely looking at. Other than that, we're still working on that puzzle of trying to figure out how to get more consistent time for science.
So I would take it as one more checkbox for, you know, why we need to figure out how to get after that at some point, you know, in these next few years, because, again, it's like the fourth or fifth thing that we would look at, we'd say there's not enough time for it in the schedule, and we gotta figure out how to solve for that. Marion, one other question that was for you specifically, the middle school math license, when does the current license expire?
In June,
In June, okay,
yeah.
okay. And we feel good about being on track to be ready in June for,
We do.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, we have hopefully we have definitely publishers presenting in February before an early March meeting, so February, early March, and then narrowing down the choices of curriculum and doing some local site visits in the spring to talk to teachers who are implementing the curriculum that they're interested in.
I remember years ago, at some point during the early implementation of IM, we talked about, you know, maybe one day would make sense to think about a consistent, you know, consistent curriculum provider across. Is IM in that consideration set? I don't want to put my thumb on the scale for it, but are they in that consideration set, or?
It's definitely on the list of HQIMs, and so, but I'm not sure that the teachers, where the teachers will go.
Yeah, I really don't want to put our thumb on the scale for it. I was just asking the question.
Yeah.
So, and then, Erin, you made the comment about, you know, we don't have literacy coaches and the sort of embedded training that comes with our purchase of ARC is going away. Is there an option for us to bring those folks back on like a contract basis for those kinds of days?
For
Okay.
sure, for sure.
Are we looking at that for next year?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, Lit Labs, I think, would probably be the way to do that and build it out and continue the partnership with Hill, too.
Yeah.
Because I think it's both. I don't think it's a like either or. I think it's a like both kind of situation. But like doing that, I think, at each school would be very costly. So I think the Lit Labs are sort of the mechanism.
That's
and
yeah,
the
that's kind
structure.
of what I was getting at,
Yeah.
like just in a targeted way,
Yeah,
not the same
no, we
volume
could,
of support
we
we're
could
getting today.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that, that speaks to the partnership with both, right? And like
Yep.
really trying to make sure we maintain that partnership, even if we don't have the professional learning that we've had the past couple of years, because we don't need that kind of professional learning, right? We need a different kind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love all of the focus on evidence-based practices. I think that there's so much good research happening out there right now in terms of what does and does not work for student engagement and student retention. I also really love the degree of ownership that you are giving to teachers in terms of being involved in the process. And I understand what Tom is saying in terms of the potential for misalignment. I hear my kids, my daughter in the middle school talk about, oh, our team's doing this and the other team's doing this, and it's not quite equal. But I also know that from the educator perspective, it really does help to be able to include your own input and to be able to include something that you are passionate about. And so I don't mind a little bit of kind of personalization in there. I think it can really be very stimulating when the students see like, oh, this is something that this educator is really excited to teach about. And I know that not all teachers are excited to teach about all topics, and that if you're using a common curriculum, sometimes you might end up teaching, in ELA, you might have to do a whole unit on a book that you're not particularly fond of or something like that. So I really do appreciate kind of the effort to give teachers a voice in the process, because I think that does translate to benefits for the students. I don't have any specific, I think, questions about any of the projects that have been discussed tonight. I still have, I guess, some broader questions about how these kinds of curricular considerations are responding to continued changes that are happening sort of outside the classroom, and in terms of things like the introduction of AI, and obviously there's an increased reliance in the classroom as well on technology. I'm sort of just wondering how much of a consideration in these curricular evaluations is being given to what's happening when the students go to apply these skills outside of the classroom environment during the day. Is that something that's being discussed at all? Is it something that the teachers are talking about? Is it something that's not really on anyone's radar? What's the status of that as sort of an external factor that might be affecting the learning process for students?
That's a really interesting question.
It is.
Yeah.
I will say, the topic of AI comes up now in many of our conversations where it didn't even a year ago.
Okay.
But I would say like a lot of our PD around AI is in that introductory phase where it is sort of this separate thing
Yeah.
and not fully integrated. But having said that, we do start to see AI pop up in some of the broader trainings and whatnot. I'm just thinking of a training Kaz Hall ran for staff around supporting ML learners, where she, gave them like this very detailed prompt that can help you align your lesson objectives with WIDA standards. Like, that's just a simple example, but that is starting to come into play, this sort of alignment and this giving teachers ideas of how technology can support. I think that especially at the elementary level, perhaps we haven't made all those connections all the way through, where middle school, certainly high school, when we're talking about some of the projects we didn't talk about today, that idea of where our students are headed and sort of how their careers are going to look different, the jobs they're going into are going to look different. That conversation is starting to come up. But I think it's evolving for us right now as far as how that fits into like our curriculum review.
I'm thinking about it in terms of, you were talking about the Amplify program and sort of the analysis of what are the skills that they have in 6th grade, going into 7th grade, from 7th grade going to 8th grade, and so forth. And thinking about what I see when I'm grading student writing at the college level, and it's not great right now in terms of the students' ability to engage with some basic kinds of writing skills because they're falling back on AI as a crutch. And so I'm curious to know if there's a way to kind of integrate that into the discussion to make sure that the skills that are being emphasized in the classroom aren't being, or to try to minimize the likelihood that those skills are being undercut outside of the classroom by virtue of the availability of this kind of technology. And I don't think there's an easy answer to that. Certainly at the higher ed level, we have not even begun to figure out a good answer to that. But I do think it's a conversation worth having.
I will say on the flip side too, that a lot of the curricula, like IM, has its own bot that at this point, like, teachers can use. So if they want more practice problems that are IM related, they can use this. And at the student level, there are some bots that will help students work through a math problem and not giving them the answer, but like supporting them in going through. And yeah, so there's definitely, I know that there's some negatives and there's also some positives as well for AI in education.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No? Awesome.
All right, thank you both.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Great work.
got
A
it.
lot of
Yeah,
great
thanks
work.
for having us.
Yeah. All right, we have 3 scholarship awards to release funding for, I suppose, or authorize expenditures from. So, Tom, do we have motions on those?
We do, but before I do the first one, I have a question.
Sure.
Because the first one's a Libby one, right? I believe the actual documentation for the Libby scholarship calls for $4,000 per scholarship. Where did the 40,000 come from? In the past, we've done 88,000. Was this purposeful, or did somebody?
I don't have the details on that. If there's a question about it, we probably should just hold it for next week, and we can look into it.
I would have said something to Sarah last night, but I forgot about it, so we could have researched it ahead of time, but then I was looking at it, and I was like, wait a second, that number seems really low for 22 people.
You looked at last year's, and it
I
was
looked at,
88,000?
yeah, I looked at,
I wonder if the funding's
funding's over $1 million still,
Oh,
right?
it is?
Yeah, or it's up to $1 million last I saw, but maybe our CFO knows. But I looked at, which packet is this? This is 2015, 313, so March of last year, 2025, March of last year, we distributed 88,000 over 22 scholarships. And I'm pretty sure at one point I looked at this scholarship and the language says 4,000 per scholarship.
Okay, let's,
You want to table that one?
yeah,
or-
let's table that one.
Okay. So, move to table.
Well, we haven't made a motion yet, so we don't have to table it. We don't have to formally
Wow.
table it, right? Oh, go ahead. We'll
You can
it
table the
anyway.
agenda
Yeah,
item,
sure.
right?
Sure, go for it.
Move to table the David B. Libby Scholarship pending review of the amount to be dispersed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Sarah?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. Okay.
Actually, I think we took that out of order, so apologies, Sean, but.
No, that's the
That was
first one.
back at- Yeah, okay. So
Yeah,
this is-
no, you're good.
Carla's
That was the
notes are in
first
the
one.
wrong order.
So
Okay.
it's the Dave Savio one. next.
Salvio now. So, motion to approve the expenditure of $2,051 from the David Savio Law Enforcement Scholarship to be provided to one senior in alignment with the scholarship criteria.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Sarah? Tom?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. And then Arthur Spencer, finally.
Motion to approve the expenditure of $400 from the Arthur L. Spencer Memorial Scholarship to be provided to one senior in alignment with the scholarship criteria.
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Sarah?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. Okay. All right, we'll move on to old business. So we will open the floor for any additional discussion that folks have about the budget. I know, obviously, it's a relatively straightforward budget, being level service. I don't believe there were any questions from the committee that were provided, last week, but if anybody's got anything they want to discuss this evening, now's your chance.
Just one, I guess, question, to see if the administration had a chance to look at any other funding that would not use all of the school choice in the first year? Or if this is the locked-in expectation right now, unless, like we said last time, we have more retirements or resignations that fund a little bit more in the budget.
This is the plan as of right now, but, we do have the ability to move around within the various funds that we have, depending on what the balances look like. But in terms of looking at any other revenue sources, no, we have not looked at anything else in the last 2 weeks. If anyone wants to give us a nice large donation, I'll be happy to take that.
Okay. Anything else? Dr. Quorum, anything on your mind? All right. All right, so we'll move to the superintendent search. So there's a revised timeline in the packet, but before, I'll give kind of a broader update before we go to that timeline. Obviously with our abridged process here, the first, sort of focus was on getting the community input mechanism set up. So we got the survey launched. We have focus groups scheduled for next week. We've certainly gone well down the path on recruiting the screening committee. We've had a good response. There are a few pockets, some of those where we specified you have to have one at each level. We've got a few a few gaps there, so we'll have to do some more targeted recruiting to fill in some of those holes, but I do think we'll probably be in a position to ask the committee to approve the membership next week. So that was sort of the first focus. The focus now is on actually getting ready for the posting, which, we currently are planning for February 2nd. So developing the role description, some of the marketing materials and so forth. So working with folks in the administration to do that. I was hoping tonight to have a draft of the role description for us to review. We don't have that, so we'll share something. We'll share that, as early as we can next week, and then, have time to review it. And if we need to, make edits on the floor on Thursday. But that's the general update in terms of where we are. One other thing that's on my radar is I need to grab time. I've got to reach out to Colby and get time just for a refresher on, sort of the open meeting law elements and some of the things we need to be cautious of in terms of how the screening committee does their work and that kind of thing. It's been, I know you're more or less familiar with it, but it's also been 5+ years. So a refresher would be helpful on that. Tom and Laura are going to be the school committee participants on the screening committee. And then, the rest will, as I said, we'll sort out next week and, bring a proposal for this group to vote on. So those are the general updates. And then again, the sort of action I'd like to take tonight would be to approve the updated search timeline, I guess with the amendment of dropping that draft review from January 22nd. But let me just kind of take a walk through it and share the thinking and the rationale here. So, last time we met, we talked about finding a way to accelerate the timeline so that we can take a vote to appoint a new superintendent prior to the election. And so we've kind of targeted April 6th as sort of the drop dead date for that, with the election being on April 7th. So working backwards from there, that's kind of how this timeline came to be. The opening, the intent is to post the opening on February 2nd. It'll be open for 4 weeks, give or take. So it'll close on March 1st. Before the posting closes, we will hold the orientation meeting for the screening committee on February 24th. Everybody who's been reaching out to participate has, been able to confirm their availability for that, so we should have full attendance for that. The application will close on March 1st, and then, we'll submit we'll share the applicant info at that point to the screening committee. The screening committee will meet 3 days later on March 4th to choose from among the applicants who they want to bring in, who they want to identify as semifinalists and bring in for interviews. Also to do some preparation for interviews. So we'll, a little bit of a, here's how the interviews are going to work, here are the roles everyone will play, and also to, share some information about how the question development will go. The screening committee will have about 3 days from there to submit any questions they'd like to see asked in the screening interviews to the chair of the screening committee, who will have to identify during the orientation meeting. And then the chair will take on the responsibility of developing the question set that will be asked consistently of all applicants. Once we get the applicant, the list of semifinalists from the screening committee on March 4th, we'll immediately go to work on scheduling applicants into windows between March 9th and March 18th. And in the note we sent out to the community last week, we laid this out, but the 9th, 10th, and 11th, which is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 16th, 17th, and 18th, and then the evenings on those 6 days, and then the morning of whatever the Saturday is in between, the
14th, I think.
14th, I guess it is.
Yeah.
The morning of that day will be the windows that we'll target. Depending on how many semifinalists the screening committee selects, we hopefully can fit that into 3 to 4 of those 7 windows and not use all of them, and ideally front load those as much as possible. So that we can get the screening interviews done, on the earlier side there. The screening committee will come, or at least the chair of the screening committee will come to us on the 19th and present the lists of finalists. We have a formality to sort of approve that list of finalists, ask questions that we might have of the screening committee, and then the screening committee is discharged at that point. Even before the screening committee comes to us and presents a list of finalists, we'll get to work on notifying the folks that have been, selected or recommended as finalists by the screening committee. We'll get to work on notifying those folks and pulling together both site visits and interview schedules, so that we, again, can get those scheduled as quickly as we can. March 23rd through April 3rd is kind of the full window there, but if we've got 3 or 4 finalists and can squeeze them all into that first week, we'll try to do that. And then that'll put us in position to maybe be taking our vote on April 2nd, even advancing it a few days, rather than having a special meeting on the 6th. So that's the timeline as it sits. It's fast and daunting, and there's a lot to do. I think it's doable, but it's fast. So the good news is, February is a little bit of a quiet period, so it'll be a good time to sort of get all our ducks in a row in terms of, even drafting the emails that are going to go to candidates saying, hey, if you're offered a finalist slot, this is what we'll need from you, and, this is what, the scheduling considerations that you should start thinking about now. We'll be prepared to sort of get all that stuff out, as soon as we hit the milestones in March and cruise right along in March, which is when all the action will happen. So let me pause there for questions on the schedule or any of the other updates I shared.
Just on the committee itself, have we already received feedback from the CPAC, or do we need to proactively reach out to them?
That's one of the gaps we currently have. We have a number of parents who've reached out, but none of them have self-identified as I'm involved in CPAC, or, I have a student, a student on an IEP or what have you. So I will do 2 things. One is to follow up with those parents, just to ask if any of them do have that experience, and 2 is, to reach out proactively to CPAC to ask that they contact their membership and encourage folks to apply.
Okay.
Yep.
And the same with our METCO, do we have that?
We're in the same situation with METCO
situation?
currently, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So we can leverage maybe Friends of Ready METCO board and ask them?
Friends of Ready METCO, and I'll reach out to Jerica and Cindy as well.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, those follow-ups are all on my agenda for tomorrow.
Okay. Any other?
All right, well, if there are no other questions, we can take a motion. We'll just call it as amended, I suppose.
Yep, that's fine. Move to approve proposed superintendent search timeline as amended for the draft role description.
Is there a
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Sarah?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. Okay. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there another motion?
Motion to dismiss.
Adjourn.
Adjourn, sorry. Sorry, I'm in classroom mode.
I'll take it. Adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Tom. Sarah?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.